Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everybody, welcome to my guide for Anhur. Anhur is a crowd control based ADC with exceptionally high damage and is one of the trickier gods in the game mechanically. Anhur is a bit like Yasuo in League of Legends. His early game is only as good as you can make it, with an exceptional mid game and a slow but sure drop off late game. This means that though his mid game is pretty easy thanks to your damage numbers if you're not behind, you still have to try and bring it home in the end once other gods start to catch up to your damage numbers. Build wise, Anhur is extremely flexible. Naturally, the hunter build generally considered best by the community is the one you'll see most often on him. But you can really go in any direction with him and it'll feel good. Power pen, attack speed, crit, it all feels good on him. Or should I say on her. With Relics, yeah, you can already guess. Beast Aegis is the way to go 100% of the time, no real wiggle room there. So Anhur is one of Smite's oldest gods at this point, but his mechanics are still some of the most complex in the game. So his combos might not be obvious to you right off the bat, so let's break him down. Anhur's passive is one of the most simple but also most effective in the game. When Anhur hits an enemy with a basic attack, they have their physical protections reduced by 20 flat for 3 seconds. Yep, so that means exactly what you think it means. You want to start most of your combos off with a basic attack if you can, but yeah, you're probably going to be doing that anyways. This is more of a background passive that can help Anhur a lot during trades, but typically Anhur can't take one-on-one trades until his first back regardless of this passive. That said though, you do definitely feel this passive's impact on squishy targets, and as I mentioned earlier, once you start hitting that mid game, you can easily see your basic attacks gain 30 to 50 damage by just stripping off the protections with this passive. Another note is that it does of course increase any god's minion damage taken, so it's also good to take your wave's current size into account if you're going to try and go for a trade. Again, that's something you'd want to be doing anyways, but it does highlight how much Anhur's passive helps enhance what he's already going to be doing. This passive also works great in conjunction with his first ability. Anhur summons a pillar structure with a large AoE around it. This pillar acts as a thin wall for players, and ally or not, they are unable to pass through it. More importantly than the pillar though is the AoE around it. This AoE, as I'm sure you've already guessed, slows all enemies inside of it, but also increases the amount of damage Anhur's basic attacks do against all enemies inside of it by a flat increased percentage. So of course you use this as you're starting a trade. I like to basic, pillar, basic to start my combos off. And once you hit level 5, you're able to cast this right at your feet as you run away for a perfect placement for self-peel. In terms of placement of this ability, well, I typically try to place the pillar itself as close as I can to the intended target, as this ensures the maximum extent of the AoE is used, but just shooting for between the pillar and the edge of the sands will work just fine too. But this ability isn't only great for fighting or peeling off gods though. The increased damage works on every minion type in the game, including jungle bosses and titans. Just keep in mind that the Titan and Gold Fury cannot be body blocked by any structure and will simply despawn the structure if they were to be stuck behind one. So let the Gold Fury or Titan get a seated position first and then place the pillar down. It works just how you think it would, and other than the trick where you can use it at your feet, there's not too many hidden mechanics with it. Well, one does come to mind, and it involves Anhur's second ability. Anhur quickly shoots forward a projectile. This projectile passes through all minions hit, but stops on the first enemy god hit and pierces them, sending them flying for the rest of the projectile's range, and they are stunned if they collide with a wall. This is Anhur's signature move, and is one of the more layered abilities in the game. So while this ability is obviously excellent in a one-on-one trade, it is also Anhur's only form of wave clear, meaning that every wave clash you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to all-in or clear the wave. Yes, all-in, since Anhur really isn't one to take short trades. He's more of an all-or-nothing character rather than a character who can hit an ability or two, get a couple of basics in, and go back to clearing the wave. And while his second ability is a great combo starter, it's still great as a finisher as well, as you saw in the intro. This ability is damn near an execute in the mid-game with its damage. This does mean that there's going to be a couple times when you're first starting out when you punt a low-health target away instead of killing them, but hey, learn by doing, right? It's also not a bad idea while laning to just hold this ability as long as you can while basic attacking down the wave, constantly positioning yourself to the sides of the wave rather than up the center to give the impression that you're lining up a shot on them. You shouldn't be afraid to just throw it out there too. You have to condition your opponents to be wary when standing in your impale range, otherwise they're just going to kind of walk all over you. Since the impale will still deal damage to minions if you send a god flying through, any god who needs to stand at the center of the minion wave to clear should be getting a swift impale to the face every time they try to clear. What you can do to those who don't respect your second ability is combo it with your pillar. This classic combo is one that's been seen less and less as time has gone on, in part due to it being so infamous and therefore expected, but also because lateral space in the dual lane has thinned quite a bit over time, especially around the towers, making regular impales easier to hit, but it's still extremely effective and something you want to practice. Not a lot of tips and tricks here, it's one of the few things in Smite that's absolute pure mechanics and raw aiming skill. You have to place both the pillar and your impale in a very small window around the enemy god and fire them both almost instantly if you want this to work. But if you can get it down, it's an extremely useful skill to have. And also, why set up this tricky little combo when you can achieve a very similar effect by using your third ability instead of your pillar? Anhur's third ability is a simple, relatively fast leap. Once Anhur lands, he deals damage to all enemies in the area, but more importantly, knocks up all enemies hit, setting you up perfectly for a basic attack into your impale, or just a bunch of basics if you like. Of course, you can use this as an escape tool too. And since it's a leap, it's one of the stronger ones in the game. That said, it is still fairly reactable, both from the perspective of those who are aggressive on you and the ones you're trying to aggress on. So while you want to harass with your impale all you can, you want to keep this tool for aggression in your pocket for the most part. Not only because it's your only escape, but you want to ensure that you hit it and use it only when you're pretty much guaranteed to kill with a combo. This is typically when Anhur is around level 8 or 9, once his impale is approaching maximum level. You also need to keep an eye out if the enemy lane opponent has Aegis, as a single use of Aegis can soak up most of Anhur's damage in these early mid-game combos. And you guessed it, is because of his ultimate. Anhur becomes CC immune for 2 seconds and fires a total of 8 spears. These spears also helpfully proccing his passive. Not only is this one of the most effective CC immunities in the game for some damage limitation when getting dove, it's also, at this time anyways, the highest damaging single physical ability in the game. But as I'm sure you can already tell, it comes with a few drawbacks. Like I mentioned earlier, 1 Aegis and almost all of it's gone. But also, you have to worry about movement abilities. Dashes pose an issue since if they move too fast, you will miss a spear or two. Worse though are leaps, which can not only go in a multitude of directions while avoiding a good chunk of the ult, but can also have the benefit of damaging you in the process, especially if they're a character who can match your aggression, like Ullr. That said, it's obviously still an absolutely devastating ability, and in those cases where dashes and leaps can avoid a bit of the ability, Anhur's core damage is still more than enough to force those abilities out, then chase with this ability's exceptional range. Whether you start out with this ability to chunk out an enemy or save it for finishing them off, this ability is a must use in every combo. Speaking of combos, here's a few. For ability leveling, you want to start with your 2 at level 1, your 3 at level 2, and your 1 at level 3. From there you want to level your 2, your 1, then your 3, leveling the ult whenever you can. You can see I point skip at level 8 to get a point into my impale and my ultimate at level 9. Now this isn't necessary or anything, but it always felt best to me. Anhur, despite being one of the earliest gods in SMITE, is one of the trickier ones to get right. Sure, he's a hunter, so sometimes all it takes is getting a small lead early, then just holding down the basic attack button for 20 minutes. But when the meta gets a little too late game oriented or too tanky, he starts to struggle, especially around those tanks. Squeezing the most out of him too, especially in the early game, can be tricky, especially the better the opponent is at reading your movements. He's one of the few characters in the game where you have to do as much learning in practice mode as you do feeling out your limitations in actual matches. That said, Anhur has never been an outsider sort of pick, so he's not only rewarding to learn as a consistently strong ADC, but also one that enables extremely fun and mechanically intensive combos and outplays. That's all I have on Anhur for now. Thanks for watching.